Now, you and I both know the facts are that you've passed a clean resolution, continuing resolution. Democrats have yet to vote for that, not enough of them in the Senate. And still, according to an NBC poll, 52% of Americans are blaming congressional Republicans and/or Donald Trump, as opposed to 42% blaming Democrats. Why would the polls look like that when you are clearly voting to continue to fund the government? Democrats are not voting to continue to fund the government.
Well, for one thing, the polls are all over the place. I mean, CNN was reporting just on Friday of last week that Republicans were winning this as if it was some sort of political game. The only people who lose here are the American people. But those statistics like that, polls like that, don't surprise me. The entire media establishment is parroting the talking points of the Democrats every day. It's the most staggering level of gaslighting we have ever seen in American politics. But I think the longer this drags on and the more pain that's experienced by real Americans, I think they're going to be digging beyond the headlines and looking to see who's really responsible, and the facts are very clear.
Now, it also could be that Republicans are being blamed because they are in charge of all three branches of government. Interesting. Tomorrow will be day 35 of the shutdown and will then be tied for the longest shutdown in history. The other one, of course, being one in 2018 when Trump was also in charge. The painful impacts from the shutdown are now coming into clearer focus. Hundreds of thousands of civilian federal workers are not getting paid, forcing many to turn to local food banks and feed their families. Meanwhile, flight delays are growing worse around the country due to air traffic controller and TSA agent staffing shortages. And 42 million Americans who rely on federal food benefits through SNAP will receive only about half of their monthly benefit in November. On Tuesday, Senate Majority Leader John Thune will hold a vote on the same House-passed funding bill to reopen the government a 14th time. Democrats, who are demanding that Trump negotiate with them over expiring healthcare tax credits before agreeing to open the government, are expected to vote down that bill yet again. Healthcare is the clear sticking point and a bipartisan group of House lawmakers have released a statement of principles on a potential compromise. Since it's a bipartisan group, they're calling it principles. You would be right not to get excited. Republican reps Don Bacon of Nebraska and Jeff Hurd of Colorado, and Democratic reps Tom Suozzi of New York and Josh Gottheimer of New Jersey are the ones putting this forward. Here's what their framework says. The four lawmakers are endorsing a 2-year extension of the enhanced tax credits and an income limit on who can qualify for them, which would range from $200,000 to $400,000. In a bid to appease conservatives who believe that the credits are wasteful and rife with fraud, the bipartisan coalition calls for both parties to identify ways to crack down on agents and brokers who engage in fraudulent practices when enrolling people in Obamacare health plans. The lawmakers also want to ensure that enrollees are notified of the value of the premium tax credits and that ACA marketplaces track down, quote, ghost beneficiaries who may be improperly enrolled in the plans. And while all four lawmakers are part of the bipartisan House Problem Solvers Caucus, the plan hasn't received the official support of the full caucus. Bacon has hammered Democrats for not supporting the House-passed stopgap spending measure, but said Monday the minority party needs an off-ramp over their ACA demands amid the shutdown. And his proposal with Hurd, Suozzi, and Gottheimer could offer that path. He added that such a plan would likely need to be attached to the long-term government funding bills members of the House and Senate Appropriations Committee are continuing to work through along the sidelines of shutdown talks. I mean, I don't have a lot of faith that people like Don Bacon and Josh Gottheimer are putting the interests of the working person first, Trae. But what do you make of this? This is still an issue, and you still see an unwillingness from a good chunk of Congress, most Republicans, to extend these credits, and they still want you to think that the problem here is that people who don't deserve or aren't qualified for getting healthcare coverage or some of these benefits are a drain on the system. What do you make of this ongoing fight?
That last part is like what annoys me and worries me about it, that last thing you said, because I know that a lot of people do perceive it that way. People in places like where I'm from, rural Tennessee, which is very heavily red, many of whom obviously, have Obamacare or the ACA or whatever, that many of whom also are on food stamps, by the way, and that's a whole other aspect of this. But they, in my experience, a lot of them have this sort of mentality of like, yeah, right. But the problem isn't me, the problem is all these people that abuse the system. And that's who, Mike Johnson and the Republicans, that's the problem they're trying to address. They're trying to weed that out. And heck, I agree with that or whatever. And it's like, it's the classic, I didn't think the leopards would eat my face thing, that's gained popularity on the internet in recent years. And it is genuinely very prevalent. So that's the part that worries me about it, because you can't get through like people's own, deeply embedded perceptions of how these things work. Because in my mind, you like to think that like just getting it across, like, look, all the Democrats are trying to do is try to like protect health care for people. That's the only real hang up here. The Republicans are shutting the government down and ruining all these things for the right to strip people of health care. Like, it seems like it should be pretty clear cut, but it won't be, for the reason we just talked about and so many others, just propaganda, myths and disinformation and all that. So, I mean, even the fact that it's 52-48 in favor of blaming the Republicans for this, when to me, it, should be much more. But I'm almost glad that it's even a majority, period, because that's how little faith I have in sort of the American public and their, media literacy and the conclusions that they draw, apparently, from so many things that happen in our news cycle today. So I don't know.